The country's competition authority is inviting participation of the public and interested groups in an inquiry into the public passenger transport market. Areas of interest to be investigated include price regulation, subsidies and transformation, amongst others. The inquiry will further address concerns that prevent, distort or restrict competition in a sector that caters for the transport needs of up to 80% of the population. It will focus on minibus taxis, metered taxis, app-based taxi services, all train services as well as bus services. Participation will be through submissions due by May the 25th, as well as through evidence and public hearings scheduled to take place in all 9 provinces. The Commission launched the market inquiry last June following numerous complaints relating to public transport in the country. Well, the head of communications at the Competition Commission of South Africa, Mr. Sipho Ngwenya, joins us now on the phone line. Good morning to you, Mr. Ngwenya. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Just talk to us about the process of submissions, public submissions, and the public involvement in this investigation that you're carrying out, and how members of the public should actually give their submissions and contributions.
Good morning, and thank you very much, ma'am, for having me on your program. Yes, indeed, we are inviting the public and any interested stakeholder or person to submit to the Commission if they want to participate in the public hearings. In fact, the 18th of May, which is this Friday, is a deadline for the intention to submit. If you want to have a slot during the public hearings, you need to make your intentions known by end of business on Friday, the 18th of May. But all submissions, written submissions, must be in by Friday, 25th May. And we'll be touring the entire country, at least doing mostly 2 towns or 2 cities per province, covering all the areas that we had mentioned in terms of where we have concerns, because we want to probe the efficiencies in the public transport system throughout the country.
And what gave rise to this probe? You mentioned that there are some areas of concern. What are those areas?
Indeed, we have been receiving a lot of complaints from users of public transport, from owners of the public transport. The areas of concern, as you mentioned, is that we firstly want to understand the entire value chain, but there have been issues around price-setting mechanisms, because you see prices being announced and you don't know how those prices were reached at. You want to understand price regulation, you want to understand transport planning and allocation of subsidies, which you would know that particularly in the taxi industry, the burning areas, but also around there you would want to probe route allocation, licensing requirements, and all those kinds of issues, because particularly also now that you have got this app-based, you find that some of them, their prices are regulated in terms of cabs, but in terms of the app-based, they've got their own mechanisms in terms of coming up with their own prices. So we want to understand that, we want to align it to make sure that at the end of the day, we come up with regulations or with recommendations that are going to assist efficiencies in the public or in the provision of public transport system in the country.
And just to give our viewers an understanding, once the submissions closing date is reached, how do you actually come up with, what's the process that happens after that? What do you do to come up with recommendations, and who actually implements those recommendations?
Okay, we have been receiving recommendations already, particularly from owners and other stakeholders in the sector. But what now is going to happen is that we are going to go to public. So we are going to have all these hearings are largely about 18 towns in the country, where people are going to make their submissions and tell us their experiences and come up with suggestions in terms of what must be done. Once those are done, once the process of receiving all those submissions and probing and also subpoenaing reports that we need in order to get to a determination, we'll then make findings and recommendations, which will then, through the Minister of Economic Development, should be submitted to the executive.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here this morning. That was Mr. Sipho Ngwenya, the head of communications at the Competition Commission of South Africa, just talking us through the process, saying that if you do intend on making submissions, the closing date is this Friday for you to give your intent to make submissions on the challenges in the transport sector, whether be it bus, taxi or meter taxi services.